Hello, everybody, and welcome. Sorry, I'm making sure something's going good. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Gimmal Education series today, where we're going to explore ways to enhance your expertise with your Gimmal software. Jeff, next slide, please. I'm Marcia Shields. I'm from our customer success team. I'll be one of your hosts. And joining us today is Jeff Dunning, Director of Sales Engineering, who's going to be our subject matter expert. We're happy to have you with us, and whether you're joining us live or watching this recording later. In today's session, we're going to be discussing why deletion is as important as retention. A few housekeeping items to make best of the session. At the bottom of your Zoom bar, you'll see a Q&A area. We welcome all questions, and this would be the best area for you to submit them. I'll be keeping an eye on this, and we'll pose your questions to Jeff after his presentation. The session will run for about 30 minutes, so there will be plenty of time for your questions when Jeff is finished. Finally, as a reminder, you probably heard, the session is being recorded and it will be shared after the event and also posted on the Gimmal Solutions YouTube channel. Next slide, Jeff. Great. Before we get started, I just want to thank and recognize our latest All-Stars for the Gimmal All-Star badge. Since our last session, Jennifer, Amanda, Denise, and Lily have earned their All-Star badge. So we appreciate you all being part of the community, attending these sessions, and hopefully you're getting as much out of it as we like to share for it. So before I kick off to Jeff, I'm going to launch a quick poll question for everybody to help today's discussion. The question is, where is your organization today regarding deletion maturity? Excuse me. You could all just take a minute and we'll get those questions, get the answer. Okay, almost there. There's a couple more. All right, I am going to share out results. Jeff, can you see this, Jeff?
I can, yes.
Okay, how about that? So, for those in case it didn't come up, the most popular answer, 86% of you said policies exist but not consistently applied. Probably not a big surprise.
Absolutely not.
All right, Jeff. That's it from my side. Feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcia. Let's just jump right in. I think this is a topic that's we've been having a lot of conversation about recently, and I think there's a little bit of a change in mindset that needs to go on in the space, and that is kind of really to put deletion a little bit more on the board. And the way I said that is when we talk about things like records management, we focus entirely on retention, and kind of we'll talk about this as we go on, right? But it's really, we're always asking the question of how long do I need to keep this? Right. So that's kind of what records management is all about, right? We hear records management, we think storage, archives, preservation. But what we don't think about a lot is like, what are we going to do when we're beyond that, right? What is happening with delete? And are we doing anything going there as well, right? So managing information also means you got to know when to kind of let go of the content as well, right? So, and we have to really look at deleting data who doesn't, data that doesn't really fall into the whole retention kind of category. It's like I have all this other kind of content. What's the deletion there? And we're going to change our thinking as we go through this presentation here and we get in the end, we'll see where we're looking. And I think the big thing we have to all really understand is retention does not equal hoarding, right? So just because we're saying, okay, we have records management, we have retention policies, doesn't give us the right to kind of hoard our data going forward, right? We have to keep it for whatever reason for a certain period of time, but we also should be thinking about kind of when are we kind of getting rid of that stuff. We have to, we have this just in case kind of mindset, this fear of deleting something important. Based on the poll, it's kind of like we have policies in place. We know how important that deletion is. Deletion is hard. The problem is we can create policies. we can put those policies into kind of effect, but hitting the delete key is always the hard part, right? And we always kind of tell people that a deletion policy is basically your permission to actually do the delete. So when you're doing a policy around deletion, know that when that's approved, we're going to delete. We're not going to say, here's the policy, here's the data that falls in that policy. Is it okay to delete it? Because you already got your policy, you already got your okay to delete it, right? The just in case mindset always gets in the way of that, right? Fear of deleting something important, right? Storage is cheap. We hear that, we've been hearing that for years, kind of really looking at it. It's really not cheap. Going to the cloud makes things even harder. That unclear ownership, whose data is it? I don't want to delete it because I don't know who it belongs to, right? And then always the better safe than sorry. And it's just something we have to get away from. And we really have to start looking at deletion and spending more time on like, when can I get rid of stuff? I think this stuff here, we talk about it all the time. I think everybody understands it. I really believe that the top two these points are really important. When we think about our legal risk, it's not only our legal risk, it's our legal cost. If you have it, you have to produce it. How much money are we spending on kind of going through and kind of doing e-discovery against data that we really shouldn't even have? Privacy, it's getting more important. All the laws are coming. Have some kind of control over this type of stuff. When I get breached, how bad is it going to be? And then the operational costs, the whole day to day, and we talk about this from a change management perspective and all those other areas, right? The day-to-day operations, like we want things to be a little bit easier, but how often are we recreating content because the content that I previously created is so hard to find because we just have these cluttered systems, huge amount of data. Search is a pain in the neck. It really doesn't work because there's so much data. I can't find what I want. So I'm just recreating. So you talk about operational inefficiencies, recreating data, creating duplicates of the same stuff, not being able to kind of reuse content that's available to us. I mean, I think that's a big thing that we take beyond just that risk, right? We take the risk conversation out. Everybody's tired of getting hit over the head about risk. Take the risk conversation out. Just think about operational efficiencies, about um, what all that data is doing there, right? So those are all the kind of things there. But let's start talking about what we can do to kind of start looking at things a little bit differently. And I think that's where the conversation comes in, right? Is we have to talk about retention and we have to talk about deletion. So we have to start thinking about not only how long do I have to keep this, but when can I delete this? And I think that needs to really be part of the conversation. And when we really talk about a really good governance program, it's looking at both of those aspects of my data, right? I'm looking at how long do I have to keep this because of regulations, because of whatever, but I also have to ask that question, when can I delete this? And depending on that, the answer to that question, that's how we start to build our policies. So when can I delete an employee record? There's a strict rule for applying how long I have to keep, employee records. And this is how long you have to retain it, and this is when you can delete it, right? But there's other content that doesn't necessarily have those real retention rules around it. Well, when can I delete that data? When can I delete a departed user's OneDrive? Like, what are the factors around that I have to kind of manage before I can delete that content? It can't exist forever. We got to have some time there. But we don't ask that question. We ask the question on the retention side, is there anything in there that I have to keep? But we don't ask the question, when can I delete the rest? Remember, deletion is not destruction, it's about risk control. How do I control my risk that we talked about on the other side, right? Our retention schedule should talk about how long we keep stuff and also when to dispose of that stuff. And I know it says, we have retention periods. Oh, we have to keep it for 7 years. But we really should start talking about when that period of 7 years is up, when are we going to delete it? right? And kind of what do we need to be able to delete it? Like, do we delete it the quarter after the retention's up? Do we delete it immediately upon that deletion being up? Does somebody have to approve that policy? That stuff has to be in there, right? It needs to be consistent. It needs to be a documented policy. And basically, that documented policy says, once approved, I now have the right to delete. I don't have to go back and ask anybody and say, hey, you see this policy here? I'm going to apply it to this content. Is it okay for me to delete it? No. See this policy here? I'm applying it to the content and I'm deleting the content that meets, you know, follows those kind of rules there. And it needs to be auditable. We want to track what it is we're doing there, right? But again, it's really that adding the when can I delete this to the conversation. And that's kind of where we are spending a lot of time with our customers as we walk through these various journeys of kind of maybe data minimization kind of activities or even record keeping activities to make sure that the deletions are happening, right? We have plenty of tools that manage these records through their retention period. Then the retention period is up, and none of those kind of disposition activities are happening because no one, even though we know that we have to keep it for 7 years and after that we're good, no one wants to push that button. And next thing you know, we have record systems, physical, electronic, whatever it is. We have record systems that have content beyond its retention period, but we don't have a deletion policy, and we just have all these deletions waiting to happen, and they just never happen. So, like, what is our retention period? Keep it forever, and that's the problem. And like we said, in a lot of cases, we have the policies to drive these activities. We're just not enforcing those policies for whatever reason, and we have to kind of get to that point in time. Deletion builds confidence, right? Deletion is going to build confidence in what's going on with our thing. It reduces our legal discovery burdens. We talked about that. It's the cost of discovery. It's the smoking gun. Sometimes that ends up happening to be in there, but there's a burden around legal discovery there. It demonstrates accountability from an organizational kind of footprint is like we're accountable. We're going to do the right things. We're going to keep things for a long time, but we're also going to get rid of it when we need to. Privacy laws is going to be a huge thing. It's going to continue to kind of go forward and be there. And then when we start doing it the right way, we start building trust across our user community in a data governance program. And I think that last point is important, right? We have we're all facing the same thing. Like every time I get involved with having conversations with customers, no matter where in the journey kind of we are, the big thing is there's a lot of pushback from the user community, right? I really need that. How do I keep the stuff important to me? How do I kind of do all these kinds of things? We start putting policies in place and we effectively manage those policies and things are done the right way and kind of always we start getting that trust that we're doing the right thing. We're keeping the stuff we need. We're getting rid of the stuff we don't need. We're increasing our operational efficiencies by having, kind of data that we can all live with that's accurate. We get to do fancy things like AI and all this other kind of stuff that's coming at us really hard. But really, that's the part that everybody is not kind of we're not achieving the right level of deletion capabilities to be able to support a lot of those initiatives around AI. And this is the conversation that we're having. There's most organizations we walk into, we don't have to talk about how long are you keeping stuff? Do you have a retention schedule? Are you managing your records? Everybody has that kind of stuff. They know what they need to keep, the important stuff. What they don't know is when can they delete everything else and when is all that kind of stuff happening, right? And I think this is really where a lot of this stuff kind of comes in. Here's kind of how we start to turn that, into practice, right? Review your retention schedule. I really think it's important that retention schedules kind of have a section where it talks about what happens when retention is up, what happens at the 7 year mark, what is the deletion activity that happens. Delete without kind of approvals? Do we have to get approvals? Do we wait a quarter? Do we give it 7 plus 1? Whatever the case might be, put something in place and then let's apply that deletion beyond that retention for whatever those kind of things are. We definitely have to do outdated, redundant data minimization, rot cleanups. The list goes on of whatever it is. But find that stuff and put a policy for when that deletion could come up. Engage your legal IT compliance, have the conversation and say, okay, here's our retention schedule. Here's how these deletion things work. Let's approve that new kind of vision of our retention schedule where it has the deletion policies. Let's put policies on our rot, how long we're going to keep OneDrive data, how long we're going to keep emails, what are we going to do with data that's kind of employee left, what are we going to do with their OneDrive, all those different kind of areas of data you have. Work with legal, IT, and compliance, come up with those policies, and then most importantly, wherever possible, automate the deletion. Automate and make sure it's audible, that deletion. Like leave the people out of the process. If the people are in the process, it doesn't get done. Tell you, like we just talked about with the record systems, when we have people who have to go in and kind of approve a disposition or start a disposition workflow, any of those kind of activities, they tend to not happen. Someone doesn't want to personally be the person that pushed the button, so to speak, to kind of make that deletion happen. Wherever possible, automate the deletions based on your policies. It's one thing you can do to really get the ball rolling down the hill, so to speak, right? Most of the time, rot cleanup, data minimization activities, we always feel like we're pushing the boulder up the hill, right? We're always fighting someone in the process. It's a pushing the boulder up the hill process. If you do two and three, right, identify that data and engage legal and come up with policies, we can start getting the boulder rolling down the hill, and we're not fighting everyone at every kind of junction point in the process, right? And really, you have to talk about why we're doing the deletion, right? Deletion is protection. We're protecting the company from privacy laws, legal burden, all that kind of stuff, right? Start letting the base, your user community, understand why we're doing this. We're not doing it because we want to get rid of your content, because we think your content is not worth keeping. We don't think, it's not because we don't think you have valuable stuff for yourself. It's because we're protecting the organization. It's the right thing to do, right? And the big thing there is, right, continue to ask the question when you're looking at data and you're talking to people throughout the organization is, when can we delete this, right? When can we delete this? And the answer to the question, if the answer is never, that's not an acceptable answer. There's no never in this process, right? Yeah, there's permanent records and that kind of stuff, but you have to have a reason why you're keeping it forever, right? You can't just answer the question, well, you can't delete it. You never can delete it, right? That's not an answer to the question. We have to make people start thinking a little bit differently about what's kind of going on there. And as we go here, right, I think this is the motto, and this is the motto like we try to push when we're talking with a lot of our customers, right? Let's keep what matters. Let's let go of what doesn't. Let's get from clutter to clarity, and that's the biggest kind of point to everyone is, right? It's not all about, oh, it's risk or it's records management and it's like yada, whatever the thing is. Like, let's talk about clutter versus clarity. Let's talk about data as information. Let's talk about how our organization can transform itself into using information as a positive, like to make better decisions. And when we have that clarity, that helps us about it, right? Records management is not just about storage and life cycle and retaining stuff. It has to work together with deletion. Okay. So that's, I think, the real motto is of how we talk about stuff is keep what matters, let go of what doesn't. Ask the question, when can I delete this? And when it's done right, you become a little bit more secure. Breaches hurt a little less. They're going to hurt no matter what. There's not much you can do about it. We can make them hurt a little bit less. We can take all those terms that are out there, right? We can minimize our blast radius and all the other things we want to talk about. But basically, right, if we can get this stuff done, we can make it hurt a little bit less. We can become compliant. Senior leadership is going to be concerned about our compliancy around privacy and stuff like that. As these laws continue to kind of come out and they continue to hold senior leadership kind of responsible for some of this compliance stuff around privacy and people's personal data. They're gonna want to know that we're doing the right things in these areas, right? And lastly, the efficiency side, right? Searchability, the ability to reuse content. I've created this great document 7 months ago. Boy, I really don't want to rewrite it, right? I want to use that same piece of content, but for whatever reason, I can't find it because there's so much clutter. Like we want to get to that point in time. So if we do this right, and it's like again, the last bullet point doesn't say retention done right. What it says is deletion done right. I think we've long been doing the retention stuff properly. I mean, I think one of the problems, and we've had this conversation a little bit, is in the paper space, when all this come to, right, we managed our paper a little bit differently. And the reason for that is we took our records and we put them where they belonged and we managed them in boxes and they went off site and all that other kind of stuff. All the other paper kind of stood around our office. And just because we had to manage to certain um, criteria, I only had one filing cabinet, I only had one inbox on my desk. If it filled up, I had no choice but to get rid of some stuff, right? So I was the quote unquote the manager of my own personal clutter, so to speak. And if I wanted to be efficient, I managed my clutter. I managed my filing cabinet. I managed my inbox, and that was all happening. There's no more manager of clutter because you don't feel the clutter. The clutter is happening behind the scenes in storage. IT's doing it. It feels like there's just a forever space. I could save as much as I want forever and ever and ever, and it doesn't cost me nothing. I don't feel any pain. My desk doesn't get crowded, all those kinds of things. And at work, the paper, we kind of took care of our clutter. Now we don't take care of our clutter anymore. And we have to get back to that clutter management, right? And that's where the deletion part of this kind of comes in. So those are kind of my, uh, you know, ways to kind of visualize it. I think the most important thing is ask the question, when can I delete this? Whenever we're talking about records management, retention, and all those kinds of things. So that's the end. I went really, really fast. Um, just grew up on the East Coast. I talk quick, so hopefully you got most of it. If not, if there's any questions, love to answer them.
Yes. Great job, Jeff.
Thank you.
You talked, I think, at a perfect rate. So pace. We do have, so one question here, and yes, if you do have any questions in the Q&A area, feel free to put those in there. I'm still keeping an eye. Here's one for you, Jeff. Um, can the deletion policy be implemented against different data types, maybe in one role, or is that like multiple roles? How do we typically recommend if we do on that?
Yeah, I think the deletion policy, like when you create policies for deletion, we're just kind of talking about it's a certain kind of data, and then we apply that policy across our kind of entire footprint, right? So a deletion policy that says, like a OneDrive or Jeff's P drive on a file share, it's like that personal data space. That same policy can apply either places. Now, what we can do from a tech side and automation may be different in the two areas, but the same policy would apply to that type of data
Gotcha.
across the different data sources. And we should be trying to do it across the board as much as we can, and keep it as simple as possible.
Okay. One other question. It has to do with communication. What have we seen with customers or our recommendations about communicating to the end users that deletion is coming, or just go with it?
No, I think it's important to communicate, right? Because it's only going to ease the pain there, right? So the first thing to always do is like go find the friendlies, go find friendly fire within your organization and work on a communication strategy with the friendly fire, right? Versus a department that's going to give you a lot of pushback so that you can kind of really maximize that message, right? Make that message as strong as possible, get that feedback. I think the messaging should start with, as an organization, we're embarking on this journey of deletion, and here's why, and lay out what we talked about. Like, why is this important to the organization? Maybe it's not just the risk. Talk about the risk a little bit, the privacy laws, those kinds of things, but talk about optimization, talk about making us a little bit more efficient as a company, talk about the value information can provide when we have that clarity around it, and start the communications there versus starting the communications with, hey, on November 1st, I'm going to delete anything that's greater than 3 years old in your OneDrive,
Mhm.
because that's not going to go, that's like a lead balloon. It doesn't go over well, right? So you have to start kind of letting them know why this is important. Most employees want to do the right thing for the organization as long as they're told kind of the whys and the hows, and it's not creating, another 4 hours of work for them. Those are like the things we need to do. Automation takes away the 4 hours of work for them. We tell them the why it's important, and they're going to buy into to kind of what we're doing. So the communication plot should start from there, and then we should ease into it. We should give notice and say, hey, 3 months from now, here's what's going to happen, and kind of lay out the time there and give them a little time to get comfortable with what you're doing. I would also say first round of deletes, maybe we do quarantines, not full deletions,
Mm,
hold it for 3 months someplace, just in case, see if there's any ask, and we can validate what we're doing is working.
gotcha. Great. Well, this question is somewhat related to what you just finished with. The question is, can you please share more about the automated deletion process? If this feature is turned on, how can the organization ensure that records with legal holds are not disposed?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it's always becomes one of the biggest kind of conversations whenever we're going down these punts, right? Legal hold becomes very important in this space. And the answer to your question is it depends, which is never right the answer anybody wants to hear. But if I'm using a data source like a 365 where I have legal hold capabilities built in, and I'm managing legal holds properly, and stuff is being placed on hold like it should from legal holds, then I could do an automated deletion policy and I won't delete content that's on legal hold, right? Legal hold has to be part of the conversation around the policy, right? So my policy has to say, you can delete this after 3 years after create date, as long as it's not on hold, right? So there's my policy. How do we do that last part? Really depends on kind of where this stuff is sitting. If it's in file shares, we probably don't have legal hold capabilities against our file shares, right? I can't lock down data in a file share that's on hold. I'm probably doing a collect and preserve, right? So as long as I know that my collect and preserve policies are happening, and this is, including legal in these conversations about how that stuff works, I can say, as long if I had this legal hold that came through and I did my collection and a week later I deleted some data, I should still be safe knowing that I collected the stuff that was important, right? If we're kind of worried about hey, I got this data, it's up for deletion, it may go on hold a year from now, like it that doesn't work into the whole kind of policy conversation. So what it depends on is if your system, like 365, has hold capabilities where you can lock data down, this is really an easy conversation because deletion will not delete something on legal hold. That's just the way it works, right? As long as it has that. If your data source doesn't have that, you have to think through the policy a little bit more, and you have to include legal hold as part of your deletion policy and what that means.
Great. Thank you, Jeff, for that answer. I don't see any more questions. So, that being said, Jeff, if you could go to the next slide, we'll just wrap things up for everybody today. Fantastic. All right. Well, that is the end of today's session. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have one more education session on the calendar for December 11th. That's for our Gimmal physical product, and we'll be covering tab filters. So if you are a Gimmal Physical customer, we'd love for you to join us. Other than that, we are working on our 2026 schedule currently. More to come on that, probably in mid-December. But as always, if you have any suggestions for us to do a session that you would like to see here, please let us know. Send those my way. Other than that, recordings will be coming later this week, and also can be found at our Gimmal Solutions YouTube page. Thank you again for joining us, everybody. If we don't see you, have a great Thanksgiving as well in the US. Thanks so much.